Burger King.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. And, well, last week I was sort of jokingly saying that Biden seemed to be interested in playing Hitler in a World War II reboot. And now the US is bombing civilians in Yemen, directly this time, as opposed to by proxy as they had been doing for about a decade before this, in order to, facilitate a genocide, which is just lovely. Except, I'm sorry, I've made a couple of mistakes already, because the propaganda people have made it very clear we're not supposed to acknowledge that Yemen has a government. Because you see, what happened was, Yemen had a government. It was a great government. Washington picked it out special for them. It was, murderous dictatorship, very unpopular, corrupt as fuck, horrible human rights record. People didn't really like it. But Washington picked it out, and the thing is that, you don't de-gift yourself when somebody gifts you a government like that, like Washington does. And the people in Yemen, they overthrew that government and put in a government that they liked better. And the U.S. does not want to even acknowledge that Yemen has a government now, because the government Yemen has is not one that Washington personally appointed for them. So you're not supposed to just say that there are Yemeni sanctions on Israeli shipping, which is just, the facts. They've been very specific. They're targeting Israeli shipping and shipping originating from or with the destination of Israel, and they're doing so in compliance with the Genocide Convention for the duration of the genocide. They've made that very, very clear, and you're not allowed to point that out. What the line that we're supposed to be using, apparently, is that the Houthis. There is no Yemen, there are only Houthis. You see, they have a beef with the concept of shipping in general. Nothing to do with Israel, nothing to do with genocide. They just don't like boats. And therefore, the US has decided that the way to ensure that the Red Sea has smooth sailing is to have a war there. Never mind, of course, that what Yemen is doing is actually much milder than what Israel does when humanitarian aid boats have occasionally tried to dock in the port of Gaza, which Israel has already bombed into oblivion quite a few times. Or say when fishing boats from Gaza try to fish in Gaza's territorial waters, where they just sort of shoot them out of the water. Never mind all that. We're just supposed to pretend that Yemen, that the Houthis, there is no Yemen, only Houthis, have a problem with boats. And so Joe Biden has decided to bomb the fuck out of them directly, as opposed to through henchmen, in order to get them to be okay with boats. Hello, River Rune. Meanwhile, I don't know if anyone watched the South Africa's presentation of their case. They just don't like boats. Some people don't like flying, some people don't like boats, I guess, apparently. South Africa's case, which was delivered in part by a leading Irish human rights barrister who has brought numerous human rights cases related to British atrocities in the north of Ireland over the years. Very well known, very well respected in Ireland because of it. And it just absolutely delivered that case powerfully and really left no serious room for doubt about what's going on. There was a whole long section detailing all the various times Israeli officials, top people, have said that they are trying to kill literally everybody. Yeah, trying to de-escalate my ass. I mean, like there's a very easy way that to end the Yemeni sanctions on Israeli shipping. Um, and that would be to just end the genocide, and that would end the sanctions. I mean, Yemen was not sanctioning Israeli shipping before this. I mean, fuck knows there are plenty of reasons to do so. It would be legitimate on all sorts of other grounds, including the fact that actually Israel was already breaching the Genocide Convention before this. This has just been an acceleration, but this is I mean, they didn't start doing this until this current phase of the genocide started, so there's every reason to believe they would stop doing this if the genocide stopped, because that's what they fucking said. And instead, the US has decided to just, like, start a fucking major regional war in defense of the right to genocide Palestinians. So, anyway, yeah. Uh, so, Germany has decided to intervene. They like as in like domestic court proceedings, third parties can sometimes intervene in a case between two parties if they have certain interests. And Germany holds the trademark for genocide, so they feel that they should be heard. And of course, because they are required never to leave the wrong side of history on these things, they are coming in on Israel's side. Die Fremdschämrepublik. They're really indignant about the idea that somebody they're sending weapons to is being charged with genocide, because, well, that would mean that their government is criminally liable for it. But anyway, so I had a couple ideas of what we could look at today. I mean, we've got Carolyn Glick, the Texan Zionist, the Israeli military lawyer, the settler violence denier, Carolyn Glick, and she says Israel faces the international lynch mob because she wants to find a way. She wants to find a way to make this more racist than it was already, and so comparing people trying to stop a genocide to an international lynch mob is a wonderful way of just finding a way to ratchet up the racism. So that's an option. I've also got, I mean, on YouTube, the UN YouTube channel has the full stream of the proceedings of this case, and I've got Israel's opening arguments queued up, and we could have a look and just see how they fucking try to defend against these obviously well-founded charges. And the best vindaloo recipe, which I did not actually mean to put in reaction fodder, I just wanted to save that to watch later, because if there's a good vindaloo recipe, I want it. I love vindaloo. But that isn't for this stream, actually. We've got from the river to the sea, the Quan versus the Squan, and it's like two levels of suck, so it's negative pressure. And Carolyn Glick having a normal one. Biden declares war on Netanyahu government, which is, I mean, I didn't know that you could do a war like that when you support them. Or, as Israel fights on 7 fronts, the U.S. signals it's on its own. Which, I mean, just truly amazing relationship with facts on this channel. These are the same motherfuckers. I mean, these are the same motherfuckers who claim that the protests about Gaza are actually just against Christmas, because they don't want to talk about Gaza. So, any preferences there? Anyone see anything they like? The tea has reached drinking temperature. This weather is exhausting. I needed this. So, what's everyone think? Watch some of Israel trying to explain themselves in the International Court of Justice. Carolyn Glick trying to make Israel out to be the victim in all this, in various different ways. Oh, okay, let's go for it. I want to see that because I like to rip on the squad, and I bet they're bad at it. I bet they're not good at ripping on the squad. So let's check that out. We got all sorts of fake ass motherfuckers. All sorts of blow-ins who have been in Israel 5 minutes and have decided they own the place on the strength of that. But then that's like what the entire regime is founded on, is being there 5 minutes and declaring you own the place.
Hi everyone, welcome back to...
Yeah, hi everyone. Oh, I learned some things about the fake deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Yeah, they did ironically name themselves after them. Or after, like, a field at a university.
Quad, and I'm joined here by my amazing co-host,
I
Emily
looked her
Schrader,
up.
human rights activist and
Fake ass human rights. I couldn't find any evidence of her being a human rights activist. I know you're shocked. But Fleur Hassan Nahum, she was born in London. Her parents are both aristocrats. 2 titled barristers in her family. She herself is also titled. And they moved to Gibraltar, which is one of Rich Britain's favorite tax havens, when she was growing up. So that's her background. She is a literal aristocrat. In addition to being not very good at lying and the fake mayor of Jerusalem. Fake deputy mayor.
amazing co-host, Emily Schrader, human rights activist and journalist.
She's literally neither of those things. Like, I mean, unless advocating against human rights is, I mean, if human rights activist refers to an activist whose subject matter is human rights, then I guess you could be pro or against. Just like somebody who is, like, I don't know, an abortion activist could be against abortion rights or could be for them, I guess, in this usage. I don't know, but I mean, I've never found any evidence of Emily Schrader caring about anybody's human rights. Shira Solomon, whose Twitter bio says she's a Christian, but on this show she doesn't.
Solomon, political moderator,
whatever the fuck that is,
and commentator, and over in Canada, our good friend Vivian Berkovich, ex-ambassador.
And fun fact, I decided to do some looking into these people because I was just trying to figure out what the deal is. Hello, South of Sublime. And it seems they're connected to Breitbart. So the reason they sound like PragerU, the reason their talking points sound so much like PragerU talking points, is because they're basically getting fed from the same money trough as PragerU.
Ambassador of Canada to Israel and the founder and star of the State of Tel Aviv podcast. So, as usual, ladies, we have a lot to discuss. Unfortunately, we're still in the middle of this horrific war that was brutally started against us.
Yeah, what? I mean, who invaded Europe in 1948 to justify you invading Palestine, though?
And, you know, we spoke in length last week about how the mood in the world has changed and how people are beginning to assign blame. And we also
which
spoke
they
last
never
week
do.
About the marchers, the pro-Palestinian marchers.
Oh wow, that's like the first time I've seen it acknowledged here on JNS TV that these are pro-Palestinian. Every other time they're either against Christmas or they're pro-Hamas.
And this week we wanted to talk about what does the Palestinian cause actually mean?
Oh, this will be great. We're gonna learn about what the Palestinian clause actually means. I mean, the ground. Okay, on the ground side of it, I mean, I've actually heard people on the Palestinian side calling it a war because the thing is, on the ground, it is actually more of, I mean, it's more of a fight because Israel's soldiers are glorified cops and they don't know how to conduct themselves in ground combat. And so the Palestinian resistance, and it's not just Hamas, it's like 10 different groups with very different ideological viewpoints, all coordinating together, much as was the case in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, where you had two major armed groups, and one of them, I mean, there was the Jobe, which was like communists and other leftist type people, and then you had the ZZV, which included like some right-wing Polish nationalists, Jewish Polish nationalists, and, you know, Zionists and people like that as well. And because at that particular moment, you know, the main concern was just like fucking up as many Nazis as possible and not dying. They, you know, sort of put aside a lot of disagreements, sort of postponed them in order to work together, and that is actually what we're seeing in Gaza. I mean, but what's going on from the air? I mean, there's absolutely nothing that you could call a war because Israeli planes. Well, there are no such thing as Israeli planes. There are U.S. planes with Israeli pilots, and they operate with complete impunity because the Palestinians in Gaza, despite the amazing achievements of their like homegrown clandestine arms industry, and check out Electronic Intifada's live streams to see what I'm talking about, because they've looked at the stuff that they've managed on the download to be putting together, and it is just it's incredible stuff. I mean, for people who are completely cut off from normal channels to acquire weapons and things like that. But yeah, but they haven't managed to crack anti-aircraft because, I mean, that's a whole different level of thing, unfortunately. So U.S. planes with Israeli pilots can fly over them with total impunity and just murder huge numbers of people from the air, and they're doing that.
What is it that people are marching for? We have some recent news that Emily, you'll talk about a little bit about the censure of Rashida Tlaib because of
Tlaib?
the river to the sea. So I wanted to get a little bit into the weeds with what the cause is, how has it been
I
presented.
could go for some weed. Watching this shit makes me want to get into some weed too. Shit, I could really go for that, actually.
Hamas, in fact, representing the real cause, or are people are just deluded in thinking that Hamas is an outlier of the Palestinian political landscape?
The Palestinian political landscape, it's worth noting. First of all, see, I'm pretty sure we're going to see a couple of things. One is lying about Hamas's actual positions. I mean, they've been offering mutual recognition based on 67 borders since literally 2008. And the U.S. and Israel have responded to those overtures repeatedly just by massacring hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians in Gaza. So they actually, and the propagandists would like point to the charter they adopted in the 1980s, which for all intents and purposes they had long since abandoned, which had some fucked up anti-Semitic things in it. But nobody points out that in 2017 they got sick of having this thing held against them that they weren't even abiding by anymore. And you can actually, I mean, if you listen to like Abu Ubaida's speeches and things like that, you can hear they definitely have changed their view. They are like speaking in accordance with this current the views expressed in the 2017 charter, which says their quarrel isn't with Jews, it's with the Zionist movement and the Zionist state in Palestine. Because they wanted to be clear about that, because they really got sick of having people throw that at them. Taliba, yes, Taliba. Yes, one thing I love about the word jelly bean is that it actually kind of phonetically works as an Arabic word, because Arabic and Hebrew are based on these 4 and 3 consonant structures. So, you know, jelly bean actually is phonetically correct for like an Arabic word. Yeah, I mean, those jelly beans are absolutely just beautiful. I like that they put those at the very end too. I imagine they do that just in case they get censored over them. They want to manage to get all the information out first. But it's also, when you've spent all this time watching this just absolute horror unfold and seeing sometimes people you actually have had friendly contact with, announcing that they just got murdered, their entire fucking family got murdered, all sorts of fucked up shit. It's actually kind of nice to see the motherfuckers who are doing that getting wrecked. It's actually quite nice to see that. I mean, we did not, my lot did not get the pleasure of live streaming the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We don't have those jelly beans. I would, yeah, but so on a certain level, I'm also appreciating them vicariously on that level. I mean, we have the written accounts are well worth reading.
And so this is what we're going to start talking about today. Then we'll go into some other topics, and at the end, we'll talk about our scumbags and heroes of the
Oh, well, they're going to talk about scumbags, so...
week.
I can't wait to hear who the scumbags of the week are according to these fucking people.
The Palestinian cause. What do you think it means, and what do you think it's become, Emily?
I mean, I think there's a spectrum. There are some people who
Okay, starting out well, she's going to acknowledge that there's a spectrum. The Palestinian cause is like, I guess, autism, apparently?
educated and really want to see, I don't know, a two-state solution, for example. But
which is literally apartheid. I mean, a two-state solution is literally what apartheid South Africa was going for, except they had multiple states.
I do think they're the minority. I think there's a big group.
Maybe that's because a two-state solution is absolute nonsense at this point, because you settler motherfuckers have completely filled the place up. There is, and Israel has systematically, it isn't random, the places that these settlements are set up in the West Bank. They deliberately set them up in between Palestinian villages to ensure there could not possibly be a coherent territorial entity.
Group of people who are super ignorant.
Cohesive.
And they were about people here? Are we talking about people abroad?
Abroad.
Yeah, John Elmer does an excellent job. I enjoy his work a lot. I mean, he clearly knows what he's talking about, and I mean, he just does a really good job.
The activists,
pro-Palestinian, self-defined pro-Palestinian activists.
Okay.
So there are a few people who genuinely want to find solutions, both here and abroad. And I think that the two large groups within the pro-Palestinian faction are the...
What's with the fucking quotes? Like, are you saying that they're not really in support of Palestine? What the fuck does that mean?
The people who genuinely support Hamas, and they think that it's justified or legitimate. We see a lot of that. We talked about it last week. And then there's a huge...
No, think what's justified or legitimate. Because there's like all sorts of different things that you could be finding justified or legitimate or otherwise. Because there's like a whole spectrum of actions. Because you think, for example, that taking out a Merkava tank that is going into Gaza to do genocide is legit, doesn't mean you necessarily think that, some of their earlier stuff was great. I mean, what are you talking about? There are like a million different things you could be referring to. But I'm guessing we're not going to get into that.
Huge portion of people who believe them, who believe the lies that those people are telling and think, oh my gosh, it's a travesty, we have to destroy Israel, because they don't really know what's going on. So
what lies? Come on, Emily, human rights activist. I mean, I get it. I mean, she's putting scare quotes around everything because she's a human rights activist in square quotes.
It's a combination. It's not only one thing. And unfortunately, when it comes to campuses, when you talk about the Palestinian cause, it's not what's better for Palestinians, and it's not a Palestinian state. It's
Okay, because these are the people who are going to tell us what's better for Palestinians, with not a single Palestinian invited to talk about it.
destroying the state of Israel, and that
This is a piece of bullshit that is very popular. The idea of using emotive language like destroy, I'm pretty sure chat, this is not a shot, this is not news to people in chat probably. But I mean, the idea is to try to make it seem as if getting rid of the regime, regimes fall all the time. Yeah, I mean, just look at Europe. Look at the different borders Europe has had, and look at the different systems of government that have existed, just say in the past 100 years in Europe. Lots of states have come into existence and then ceased to exist. And nobody would seriously say
that's the whole problem.
that destroying a state ceasing to exist and being replaced with something perhaps better means getting rid of the people of that state. I think there is an argument that constitutes self-care, because I think on a certain level it is actually, there is something particularly awful about seeing all the things that, nobody has actually watched one of these things live streamed in real time before. I mean, Rwanda, I mean, there was media there, but you didn't actually see a lot of the nasty shit until afterwards, because, most people didn't have cameras, and most people didn't have access to the airwaves who were seeing the shit. I think on a certain level, actually seeing at least some motherfuckers get some comeuppance is probably psychologically not bad for the mental health.
The chant or chants that they are using in these protests, the "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free."
She says
about all.
Let me just point out, she's saying this, and look at this map. Do you see any indication that there is a separate entity in the West Bank, which would be, that top bit with the indentation, or the Gaza Strip? There's nothing. This map is a single Zionist colonial state from the river to the sea. That is the map they've got up there. They don't get to complain about from the river to the sea.
Of Israel being destroyed in its entirety.
Do you think people know that?
Well, maybe the reason people don't know that is because it's not true.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do. I think a big portion do. Definitely not all. But you see these interviews where people have asked, students or protesters on the ground, what do you need? What does that mean to you? What are you advocating? And they said, oh, well, Israel should be destroyed.
Yeah.
This is where, you would want to have some actual footage, a clip of somebody saying that.
Because they've been misinformed about what the situation actually is, whose history there actually is here. And that's been a part of the Palestinian narrative from day one, to erase Jewish history.
Exactly.
Well, it's so trite to say this, but every accusation is an admission. Like, in Gaza right now, they're actually destroying centuries of Palestinian history. Israel is so careful about history that they're the only place where you do archaeology with bulldozers. With fucking bulldozers. Because they've decided the last 1400 years of history on Palestine they don't give a shit about. They're just interested in what's way down there that can somehow be used to confirm their ownership of the land and that there's nobody else there.
Exactly, or turn back history.
One of the things that's really remarkable, this is from Zionist propaganda flicks as well. They were showing pictures of Israeli goons laying looks like pieces of rubble from Palestinian homes in Gaza on top of Jewish war graves, Jewish Commonwealth war graves in Gaza. In just a grotesque pastiche of the Jewish tradition of laying polished stones on graves. And the one thing that's really remarkable that they show, it's remarkable they showed this, is those fucking graves are pristine. Like, those graves are over 100 years old. They look like the headstones were cut yesterday. Okay? And, you know, there are lots of more recent graves out there that are in much worse shape than that. And, of course, the Palestinian cemeteries get bulldozed. I mean, Israel bulldozed a Palestinian cemetery to build the fucking Museum of Tolerance a few years back, and they've been bulldozing Palestinian cemeteries all through Gaza in the past several weeks. But those fucking those Jewish Commonwealth war graves are absolutely in immaculate shape.
Which history, you can never go backwards.
What do you mean Palestinians are constantly going backwards? They like to point out how their olive groves are older than your fucking government. I mean, that they've got olive groves that are actually, like, older than the Westphalian system of international law. They've got fucking date palms that were there during the fucking Crusades. Palestinians, that's the thing about Palestine. They somehow never want to talk about the past. Haven't you just noticed that Palestinians never want to talk about history? Isn't that weird? Like, they are clearly making this for a PragerU kind of audience that really is just completely just sucking in nothing but right-wing propaganda, and that therefore they can just frame the narrative however the fuck they want.
What I always say is that the problem of this conflict, the reason we have this conflict, is not because a Palestinian state doesn't exist, it's because a Jewish state exists. And that's...
No, a Jewish state doesn't exist. A Zionist state exists. Don't you stop wiping your shit on my people.
The bottom line, Ashira.
You know, when I studied here in 2016 at the University of Haifa, and I was taking terrorism and response classes, I also had Palestinian students in my classes. I was under the impression that to be pro-Palestinian meant the two-state solution.
Right.
To support a Palestinian state.
So to be pro-Palestinian meant, by 2016, nobody was seriously talking about the two-state solution as something that was realizable. Because it's not. You just look at a fucking map. There is no way. Literally the thing that they would want, the thing that they present as, like, the parade of horribles, in order to create a contiguous Palestinian state, according to that apartheid solution, you would actually have to remove all these settlements, which are illegal, it's worth noting.
From that,
they gave you that impression.
That impression that they wanted their own state. They also didn't want, certain borders, and they felt that they were discriminated against.
They felt that. They felt that. This is a state. This is not. That is wild in the U.S., where nominally there are laws that say that everybody's equal and that discrimination's illegal. And that's buck wild here because everybody knows those laws are violated on the fucking daily. Israel doesn't have those laws. Israel has the opposite of those laws. Israel has laws that specifically say, no, everybody is not equal. This is the state of one ethnic group, wherever they are in the world. And nobody else truly has any rights to this place. And there are, I think, Adallah has the Palestinian Human Rights Organization, legal representation organization. They have cataloged, it's like something like 40, 50 discrete statutes covering every major area of life that very specifically establish these racial categories and their respective status within the regime. So, that's just wild.
That's what it
That's what I thought it was. Today, to be pro-Palestinian, to wave the flag, to me, means to be anti-Jewish. It means to be anti-Israel, and it means...
Oh, well, if it means that to her, then, I mean, I guess we don't need to investigate any further. I mean, why do we need facts?
to be anti-peace.
Yeah.
A lot of...
Yeah, well, because Israel is so big on peace. I mean, Israel, I mean, nobody loves peace more than Israel. You know, they've got a piece of Syria, a piece of Lebanon, big piece of Palestine. I'm here all week.
People have...
An anti-Palestinian.
And anti-Palestinian. A lot of people are coming out and saying, no, there's a middle ground. More people are in the middle. In my opinion, there's not a middle ground.
A middle ground between what, though? Between two viewpoints that you just fucking made up. Because let's be honest, these people... I mean, Israel, I mean, they're talking about the two-state solution because at this point, nobody seriously considers it to be realizable. When the two-state solution was something that was seriously up for discussion, Israel outright refused it. I mean, everyone, including, Yitzhak Rabin, the guy who everyone thinks is some sort of great liberal man of peace, I mean, he said he would never actually tolerate a real Palestinian state. They could have sort of a Judenrat kind of thing where they would have pretend sovereignty as long as real control remained in Israel. And somebody asked him, can they call it a state? And he says they can call it fried chicken, for as far as I'm concerned. No, I mean, when, an actual, fucking Palestinian state was meaningfully up for discussion, Israel was totally against it. I mean, Abba Eban, the Israeli, long-term, revered Israeli envoy to the UN back in the mid-20th century, he actually described the 67 borders, the legally recognized borders of the State of Israel, as the Auschwitz borders. That was the Israeli line back when there was actually some realistic chance, when it was when there was minimal conditions of feasibility for a two-state apartheid arrangement.
Majority of the international community is in the middle. I think they absolutely know what they're talking about, and they want Jews to be annihilated and Israel to be annihilated.
Protest.
Then why are there so many Jews at these things? See, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, being Jewish myself, if I go to a protest and, I think everybody's chill at first, and then I start to hear that everybody wants Jews to be annihilated, I'm getting the fuck out of there, actually. And yet, we're seeing the exact opposite with more and more Jews at these protests. So that's, that's kind of a poser. It's got me thinking, is it just Jews who, want to be annihilated? Or is it maybe that the Quad is lying to us? Acá tenemos frío y lluvia. Y, bueno, el tiempo es como la wea. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking maybe the Quad is lying to us, guys.
It's pro-Palestinian protesters, thankfully not the government. And
I mean, if they wanted to make this point, why not show some clips? I mean, the BDS campaign, the Palestinian BDS campaign, which has played a huge role, I think, in building support for Palestinian rights, because it has created this sort of venue to have a conversation about what the regime that the Palestinians are living under looks like, has very, very specific demands. They have and they have detailed position papers. Why not show us those? Why not have that as a starting point, as opposed to, well, I think this, and I'm a fake human rights activist. Oh, well, I'm a political moderator, and I think this. And it's none of you people know any of this shit. You're just a bunch of propaganda talking heads for a genocidal regime.
And on that point, Vivian, you're there on the ground in Toronto with dozens of marches. What do you think the Palestinian cause needs?
Well, see, the thing about being on the ground in Toronto with dozens of marches is you don't have to think. You can actually go out there and fucking talk to people. I mean, one thing about protesters, in my experience, is they tend to want to talk about the thing they're protesting about, and a lot of them don't know better than a lot of people will talk to people speak into microphones that they don't know who they belong to. I know this because I made that mistake once.
Means to them or to the people that you're speaking to.
Actually, I made that mistake repeatedly. I mean, like one of the first big protests I went to in Cincinnati, the March for Justice, which was during the Second Intifada, there was a pro-Palestinian bloc there. I marched with them. And some motherfucker I'd never seen before claims to be a journalist, sticks a microphone in my face and asks, "What Intifada are you supporting?" and stuff. And, and somebody afterward says, that person was probably a fucking cop, And I'm just like, oh shit. Really? Because... I was very new to all this at the time. This is 20 years ago. I have fewer excuses for the time I was protesting an honor for Germaine Greer in Cardiff, and somebody stuck a microphone in my face and claimed to be from a current affairs magazine. And it's like, just the category of the magazine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there are tons. And in fact, I mean, that is the biggest refutation of all these claims that they're making. Because if anything, the number of Jews showing up at these protests keeps growing. And part of that, I have to say, and I say this as somebody who was very much involved in it and took a lot of hits for it, is because the Palestinian Solidarity Movement has actually done a really pretty good job, on the whole, of rooting out white supremacists and anti-Semitic assholes who have tried to exploit the movement in order to promote their racist bullshit.
I don't think most of them know, but some combination of what Emily and Ashira have said. I'm sure you ladies all saw the Green Prince's debut on Twitter.
Yeah, he's great.
When he was fantastic. And when for those who may not be aware, the Green Prince, that's his nickname, is the son of a great Hamas leader, big Hamas leader in the West Bank. And he defected. He became an informer for Shin Bet, and he lives in...
Oh, okay, so, un sapo culiao.
Secrecy and hiding, probably somewhere in the States. And he's been very quiet because obviously his life is at risk, but he came out.
Yes, I mean... snitching to a secret police that is notorious for torture and murder I feel like that shouldn't be a low-risk activity, actually.
With this video, and I thought he encapsulated it beautifully. He said, when you kind of, he's talking to the people at the protest, when you kind of, idiots, whatever.
Well, yeah, see, as to my point, motherfuckers will talk into any microphone that is put in front of them. It is not hard. And a lot of people, because, and it's not, you can't blame them, because not everybody who goes to these things has, the sort of training and experience in knowing how media manipulates framing and shit. Yeah. And so you can more or less tongue-tie the shit out of a lot of people. And that's why, actually, I have to say it's probably better that people don't talk into any just any fucking microphone that shows up. Because you don't know who owns it, and it might be used to hurt you. It might be a fucking cop, even.
People are out there, demonstrating. What are you demonstrating for?
Yeah.
What are you demonstrating for? Do you know what Palestine are you demonstrating for? Arafat's corrupt Palestine?
Yeah.
For Abbas's corrupt Palestine?
Yeah.
Abbas works for Israel. But, okay, so wait, this guy's so, he's so afraid for his life that he's going out and mingling with pro-Palestinian protesters and broadcasting that shit? Wow. Hey, Phoenix, how you doing? Wow, it sounds like he really is fearing for his life, that he'll just sort of mingle with pro-Palestinian protesters in order to try to find somebody naive that he can sort of selectively edit them in order into a cell phone.
For Hamas, and he went on with this inventory, and he just called them out for the uninformed fools they are.
Well, what you're saying, because what he's saying is complete nonsense. He's like, the framing is complete nonsense, and I mean, it's interesting. Again, like, this medium allows you to show clips. I am showing a clip right now, for example. I mean, why aren't you just showing the clip? Because it sounds like he's browbeating people with framing that, like, nobody talks about it in this way. Like, this is not the way anyone talks about it. And so, yeah, you can trip somebody up by browbeating them and giving them confusing framing.
What they're demonstrating for, I think they're demonstrating for, is, they're fighting against oppression and colonialism and, right, their usual kind of checklist.
Yeah.
Their usual kind of checklist. Well, I mean, Israel does tick those boxes, it's true.
In a vacuum, because they have no knowledge.
Again, I mean, you're the one who's sitting here talking about what you think rather than going out and maybe talking to them. I mean, if you can't be bothered to go out and talk to a pro-Palestinian demo in Toronto, I know, I mean, that's just a terrifying thought. I mean, pro-Palestinian demo in Toronto, it's a fucking dolphinarium in there. But it turns out there's a thing called YouTube. And I bet you can find interviews with protesters in Toronto if you don't want to interview them yourselves and just ask them what they think and what they're protesting for.
So,
And not
I think
knowing
right
that,
now, like,
that everything they're accusing Israel of is what is the reality for Palestinians. Dictatorship and, their real occupation.
Well, yeah, that's true. The reality for Palestinians is dictatorship. And Israel is the dictatorship. They are under the rule of the Israeli state, the Zionist state, and they have literally no say in it. Constitutionally, they have no say in it. I mean, does she realize that that's not actually... See, that would be something that you could use as an own if Palestinians actually had their state. Then you could probably use that, but Palestine's under Israeli occupation. They don't have any kind of state. The only state that exists between the river and the sea is the state that you're here standing. So if you're saying they have dictatorship in reality, you're saying that your regime is the dictatorship.
Corrupt genocidal regimes.
Absolutely. And corrupt and genocidal and zero tolerance for homosexuality, for Jews, for Christians.
And I love how these are the same people you'll remember who were talking about how they don't like LGBT people. On the last stream, we're looking at, because they were saying that it's kind of fucked up that people like queer people more than they hate Palestinians, or whatever they were saying. And they were talking about the woke and how they have pronouns and all this stuff. Because, I mean, obviously, they're really big on LGBT rights, these four. But actually, Israel has a horrible record on LGBT rights, and they're particularly nasty to queer Palestinians, who they blackmail into snitching.
Women treatment of women. Medieval treatment of women.
Motherfucker, you don't have civil divorce. Literally, a Jewish woman in Israel cannot get divorced without her husband's permission. And her husband can refuse it arbitrarily. Because Israel does not have civil marriage. Personal status laws, family law, all of this is defined by the most fundamentalist-ass rabbis you can imagine. Because that was the deal that the Zionists made with the ultra-Orthodoxy in order to get them to withdraw their objections to, the colonial project. Like, you're going to talk about women's rights in Israel? You want to talk about how you have to... You have to fucking beg your husband for a get and he can refuse it?
And they stand there like these kind of, like useful,
Idiots.
puppets. Idiots, thank you.
Hey, that's so cute. I mean, the four of them are literally just talking heads to giving propaganda for a genocidal regime. And they're all saying the exact same thing right now, and like they're just fucking ventriloquist dummies, which on a certain level they kind of are. And they're calling people whose views they will speculate about, but will not show us any footage of. They're calling them useful idiots. That's so cute.
That's the word I was searching for.
I guess the idea is that these four aren't useful.
They're a bunch of useful idiots. So when they're asked anything real, they can't answer the questions. And that's
show
the real
us.
problem, is that we are a TikTok civilization now.
Then if we're a TikTok civilization, then there should be TikToks you can show us of this happening. Rather than you sitting here speculating about, I wonder what these protesters in the very city that I'm in right now have to say about the very issue we're talking about right now. I wonder what they think. Yeah, ask! Or, no, don't. I wouldn't subject them to that. Go on YouTube and find videos of them, and I'm sure there will be interviews.
To your point, Vivian, when they ask them, well, what river and what sea? Oh, they don't.
The Jordan and the Mediterranean, fuck off. Like, this is what you're going for here. I mean, granted...
Oh, isn't that great?
They could have put us on a map. They could have put New York on
And
the
if
map.
they do know, they have no problem saying, I want Israel to be destroyed.
Yeah.
Let's just remember that, the fake deputy mayor of Jerusalem up here in the top left corner is a member of the Likud party, and the Likud party charter calls for a Zionist colony over the entire territory between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. She literally is part of a party that says from the river to the sea, except they actually want a genocidal regime from the river to the sea.
Which has been one of the more shocking things for me, to see how many people...
Hey, look at her! She's got this fucking map here they're talking about for the river to the sea. That's what this map is. Look, I mean, there's no boundary for the Gaza Strip. There's no boundary for the West Bank. There's no indication of any Palestine anywhere on this map. Anywhere. And they're gonna act all they're precious about from the river to the sea?
do know and have no problem with it.
Yeah, that's what it means. That's what it means.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you that to your face. Let's talk.
Oh, well, if they will tell you that to your face, you know, one great thing that you could do, it really helps the credibility along, I find, would be to show some video of them saying that to somebody's face.
Second, about the most vocal supporters of this from the river to the sea chant, who are trying to whitewash it, and that is, of course, the squad.
The most vocal support. They're not even actually particularly consistent supporters of it. I mean, the squad includes people who voted for who voted for funding for Israel. I mean, they actually suck on Israel. On the whole. They are not the most vocal supporters. It's just like the most prominent, one of the most prominent people to have used that slogan happens to be a member of the squad.
Squad.
So this segment is now out with the squad and in with the quad. Vivian.
We're genocidal propagandists, isn't it cute?
Yes.
You know,
None of this stuff is ever going to be used in a war crimes trial because the rule of law doesn't exist, so we can just kind of chuckle our way through our fucking lies to justify mass murder.
We all have a particular favorite squad member that we want to pick on. It was, we had to fight for some of them.
I'm guessing it's going to be the Palestinian one. I mean, call me paranoid, but I think the one they're going to pick is the Palestinian one.
More prominent ones. But perhaps you can enlighten us a little bit about the poison being spouted by Ilhan Omar this week.
Oh, no. That was going to be guess number 2. I was going to say it was either going to be the Palestinian one or the black one. Because they are going to be, actually the squad has a lot of marginalized ethnicities represented, and they would probably slag off all of them if given the chance. But I would assume the hierarchy was going to be, the hierarchy of bigotry was going to be Palestinian, black, and then Latina.
Pleasure.
But apparently it's black, Palestinian, then Latina. So I got that one wrong. Their hierarchy is a little bit different. I guess they realized they had to mix it up a bit because everyone would be expecting for them to be immediately slagging off Rashida Tlaib because, she's Palestinian and they don't want there to be Palestinians.
So, look, this week, her main thing was to defend Rashida Tlaib.
You live in a fucking country of Arabic speakers. Learn to pronounce the fucking language.
Right?
Yeah. She did a better job than the fake deputy mayor of Jerusalem.
Problems with, other names too. But to defend Rashida. And as we know, Rashida's now been censored by Congress for her constant Israel bashing and extreme bashing. So,
extreme bashing. Extreme bashing. She's still a member of the Democratic Party, which is a massively just pro-Israel party. It's all just purely symbolic.
So I'm going to leave Rashida to whoever's dealing with Rashida, but Ilhan, of course, steps on.
Watch out.
It's oh, good. All right. But, Ilhan, to me, honestly, it's like, it's kind of a bit of more of like, okay, so today's Monday. She's a bit of a broken record.
Yes.
She's not, in my view, a terribly compelling orator.
Well, as opposed to Vivian Berkovich, who's just so fucking compelling. Like, I loved how she almost got Rashida Tlaib's name right the first time. That was cool, and how she sort of muddles through speculating about what protesters in the city she's in have to say about a thing that they're protesting about and therefore are kind of vocal on. Admittedly, nothing compared to the oratory talent on display in this fucking video. But, yeah.
But she did, of course, come out in very spirited defense of Rashida, and that you can't
which
shut
made her one of the few instances of decency that the U.S. Congress has ever seen, because she was absolutely right to defend her for that.
She's gonna keep saying the same things. She's gonna keep sharing her views and making them known, which is basically that Israel should be destroyed.
Is that what she says? Like, are those the words she uses? I'm curious, because if those are the words she uses, being a member of Congress, I'm guessing the words she used have been said on camera quite a few times. Why don't you just show us?
Which Emily will get into at greater length, from the river to the sea. So,
actually, the thing about language learning is discipline is the enemy of it. The more you treat it like a job, the less likely you are to actually succeed at it. Language learning, what you need more than anything, is compelling, comprehensible input in a minimal stress environment. That's what it's all about. You find things in your target language that are just outside of your current range of understanding, offer enough points of reference for you to be able to begin to make sense out of them, and that are interesting enough that they will actually hold your attention without you having to force yourself to watch them. And your brain, it is a process that is described as implicit learning because you aren't actually conscious of it. Your brain will actually do the rest, and you will just gradually realize you're understanding more and more without actually doing a whole lot.
I don't, anyhow, that's Ilhan this week.
Like, I have I have 20 working languages. There are another 20 odd languages that I have varying degrees of proficiency of. My knowledge of Georgian has really kind of skyrocketed in the past year. I have no fucking discipline at all, actually. When it comes to stuff like that. When I don't feel like doing it, I don't do it. When I feel like doing it, I do it. If I'm kind of sick of a particular language, I move on to another. I got a bunch of projects on the go. And it's all a matter of having the materials, the input that you want. And actually, River Rune, see, this is a thing I'm thinking of sort of offering as a service, and I'm kind of developing it. But, right now I'm just in the process of developing it. If you want help putting together a playlist of stuff in Spanish or whatever language you want to acquire, whatever your preferred target language is, hit me up in the Discord and we can talk about it, and I will help you find stuff that will definitely help create the Spanish or whatever shaped hole that your brain needs in order to actually in order to really acquire the language properly. It's funny.
Terrible.
Shut up, Vivian. Shut up, Vivian. I actually have an entire stream dedicated to the subject of languages and language acquisition and language learning, and also playing Oxygen Not Included, that I do on Saturdays and Fridays and Saturdays from 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern to about 7 o'clock, where we talk all about language stuff. So you tune in there too, and we talk about that stuff there too.
I find it really hard to get overly worked up, though, because I find her very uninspiring and repetitive.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe she's not supposed to be inspiring you. I would actually, if a group of Zionist propagandists said that Ilhan Omar was inspiring, that would be the biggest indictment of Ilhan Omar imaginable.
I wish everyone felt like you.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that she's allied herself with the worst dictatorships who are the worst perpetrators of human rights violations, Iran and Turkey.
Turkey, it's worth noting, Israel is also very closely allied with. Israel acts as a conduit for U.S. weapons to go to Turkey. Turkey is a fucking NATO member.
And Qatar, these are her friends. These are...
but it's funny, none of those are actually worse human rights abusers than Israel and Saudi Arabia, which you didn't mention.
Her backers, these are her funders. And so, yes, a lot to say about her. Let's talk, Emily, about Rashida.
It's funny, her posh English accent occasionally comes out. The main language that a lot of people speak in Gibraltar is, of course, Spanish, because it's really in Spain. But every once in a while, you actually hear the accent she grew up with her two fucking titled barrister parents. Well, with language acquisition, basically the only thing that works for anyone is stuff that they find genuinely interesting. Literally there is 40 years of research on this, and compelling input is key. Stuff that is so interesting it makes you forget that it's in another language. And YouTube is full of this shit. YouTube is amazing for language learning because there's just so much stuff in so many different languages. You can pretty much find whatever you're interested in.
And what happened this week? And why is she upping this at the moment? Did she not realize she was going to be censored? Is she pushing the boundaries? What's happening?
I think she's known for her like provocative acts. Even when she came to Israel, she claims she was banned from Israel or she was expelled from Israel, and actually she wasn't. She was granted a permit for entry. There was no, and she's the one who decided.
Yeah.
So she.
Wait, Ilhan Omar or is this Rashida Tlaib? Yes, they were in. Okay, according to NPR, Omar and Tlaib were both barred from Israel. This is from NP fucking R. Okay. The movement. Okay. This comes after Trump publicly urged the Israeli leader to block Representatives Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, saying it would be showing weakness if they were allowed to visit. I'm gonna just link this. This is NPR, you know, notorious far left pinko commie rag. Well, you can, if you're interested in working on this, if you're interested in coming up with just some, like, materials that you can even just passively watch, if you're interested in picking up a language, we can talk about the stuff that you might want, the boxes you'd want that stuff to tick, and I'll try to find some stuff where you can create a playlist for you. See, and there's the NPR article about how Tlaib and Omar were in fact banned at Donald Trump's urging.
She likes to stage these theatrics much more than she actually likes to represent her district.
I mean, that's true. I mean, you really can't disagree with that, because the whole squad thing is pure theater. The idea is to make working class people think that the Democratic Party has a home for them, that there's some possibility that the party might actually be democratized, that it might actually start to represent the people whose votes it depends on year in, year out. But of course, there's no way that's going to happen. They have absolutely no influence, and mostly they just go along with whatever the party line is.
Or the people who vote for her. But we saw kind of what Vivian was saying, more of the same from Rashida Tlaib, just more extreme, more explicit. And she had a tweet that actually ended up with the censure.
Oh, Duolingo is just bullshit. And it's about, I mean, it is literally the opposite of what we know about how language learning works, but it's about to get worse because they've fired basically all their translators. So now they're going to be relying on machine learning algorithm garbage for their translations, and a handful of people are going to stay on to try to turn that into usable material. So, deleting Duolingo, good idea. I say this as somebody who has successfully learned a large number of languages.
Right.
Okay, so here's what Rashida Tlaib says. From the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. My work in advocacy is always centered in justice and dignity for all people, no matter faith or ethnicity. I mean, that's actually a pretty accurate description of what people mean by further from the river to the sea, except for racist propagandists who have been trying to turn it into something else because racist propagandists are shitheads.
Where she claimed that the chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a cry for freedom and coexistence.
It's aspirational.
Aspiration.
So was Mein Kampf.
Yes.
No. Okay, first of all, she mispronounced that. It's Mein Kampf. Second of all, I don't remember Mein Kampf being an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence. Like, is that what she just said? Hang on.
Coexistence.
It's aspirational.
Aspiration.
So was Mein Kampf.
Yes. Exactly.
We all know where that got.
Exactly.
Well, what? Like, no. What the fuck? Like, I mean, I understand that Likud has a record now of Holocaust denial. Coming down from the top, Netanyahu is a Holocaust denier. But I have literally never heard... I mean, that is just wild to sit here claiming that Mein Kampf was an aspirational call for freedom and human rights and peaceful coexistence. No, it fucking wasn't.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of gaslighting, a lot of dishonesty about that.
Well, yes, I know. I mean, you're clearly watching your own program.
Intentional twisting of what everyone knows to be true. And
Again, I mean, maybe you should not watch your own stuff. I mean, there's better material out there.
I think that's why it resulted in her getting censured.
By a bunch of the most anti-Semitic people in Congress. I mean, it was overwhelmingly far-right white supremacist Christian Zionists who don't like Jews and actually like Israel specifically because it offers the option of them never having to have Jewish neighbors again.
Including by 22 Democrats, by the way, for these comments. It's just, she continues to push the envelope. She's been explicit in her support for extremists and extremist organizations, and now apparently Hamas.
What? I mean, like what? Can you give an example?
And this is, we're talking about an elected official who's a member of Congress, and she is defending a U.S. designated terrorist organization. She deserves more than just a censure.
That's what I'm thinking.
Citation needed. Also, U.S. designated terrorist organization is fucking meaningless. You know what that means? That just means that the U.S. Secretary of State put it on a banned organizations list. There is basically no recourse, and there's no due process. They can just unilaterally put anyone on the FTO list. That's the Foreign Terrorist Organization list. It is complete bullshit. Like, there are organizations on there that don't even do violence.
I mean, is there ever a point where you'd think that she could get kicked out? I mean, there's a precedent for that? Can you say something so crazy and so being a traitor? I mean, is that the next thing?
A traitor
to
what, though?
I don't know what the protocol would be for something like that, but I think we're in a very dangerous territory when you have members of Congress speaking this way. And the thing that really bothers me most about this, I think, isn't even the inflammatory.
Wait, I mean, notice that we have not actually, the one actual quote that we've got here is Rashida Tlaib saying that quite correctly, that From the River to the Sea is about freedom and democratic coexistence. That is literally the only quote that they've got for us. And so they've just decided to fucking gish gallop along without providing us any more quotes, having given us one decidedly not particularly impressive extremist quote, and they're just taking that as read now.
Inflammatory rhetoric, because as Vivian said, it's not new. The biggest problem with Rashida Tlaib is that you
can't pronounce her name correctly.
He is lending legitimacy to other people to hold these extremist views. And for her...
views in favor of, what was it, democracy, coexistence, freedom.
She's out for herself. Yeah. She's not actually advocating for Palestinians. She doesn't...
I mean, nobody who's in the U.S. Congress is going to be really seriously advocating for anything. But, I mean, this is not an objection they get to raise. You're not advocating for Palestinians. You're advocating for there not to be Palestinians. You don't get to criticize somebody because they're not pro-Palestinian enough.
Care about Palestinian women. She doesn't care that there are civilians being killed. She doesn't...
I think that she was specifically censured for pointing out the civilians being killed. The tens of thousands of civilians being killed by the regime you're doing propaganda for.
Condemn Hamas on a regular basis and the...
Wait, you not only have to condemn Hamas, you have to do it on a regular basis now?
Atrocities they commit against the Gazan people?
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone else is currently committing atrocities that might overshadow those.
She doesn't care about Palestinians. Yeah. She cares about herself. And the fact that her response, even to this censure, is to say, oh, well, no one will silence me. Nobody's silencing you.
They're trying to. That's the point of the censure. It is specifically to shut somebody up.
Nobody's silencing you. You're on Twitter all day long complaining about Israel and how much you hate the Jewish people.
I don't think she's... again, this would be a great time for you to provide a quote where she says how much she hates the Jewish people.
Clear for everybody to see, and you can continue doing that, and we can continue.
Why don't you, if it's so clear for everybody to see, why didn't you make it clear for us to see? Like, one fucking example, because, like, literally the one quote you've provided is, like, a bit underwhelming, actually, as proof of, like, genocidal extremism.
Condemning you and calling you out on your disgusting racism and anti-Semitism, because that's what it is.
No, it isn't.
That is not pro-Palestinian. She's doing nothing to support Palestinians, because if she cared about Palestinian life...
Well, what, and you are?
She would not be calling for a ceasefire. She would be...
Yeah, you see, if you were supporting Palestinians, you would not be calling for Israel and the U.S. to stop killing Palestinians. Because actually, people who really support Palestinians, like human rights activist Emily Schrader, in quotes, they want there not to be any Palestinians. They think that would be better for Palestinians. They haven't asked any Palestinians. They don't seem to care what their opinions are, but, I mean, that's...
be calling for the dismantling completely of Hamas.
Absolutely.
That was a rant, sorry.
Well, I mean, it's like, seriously. These fucking people, there's not a single Palestinian, they will never allow a Palestinian on here. And if they do, it will not be somebody representative. It'll be one of these people who has realized that you can cash in by slagging off your own people in propaganda intended to justify the genocide of your own people. But, I mean, and they're just sitting here, oh yeah, see... You really showed her. I mean, like, they're laughing. See, she's laughing here. It's so funny because none of them give a fuck about Palestinians. And they're criticizing somebody who is Palestinian. Rashida Tlaib is Palestinian. Because she supposedly does not care enough about Palestinians. Because if you cared enough about Palestinians, you'd want them all to die. Apparently. Like, what the fuck? Like, these fucking people. These fucking people, and they think it's funny. There's, I mean, like, two of them are, like, I mean, possibly three of them are, like, a couple hours drive away from just straight up the most rapid-fire mass murder of a defenseless civilian population that we have seen in decades, in generations. And they think this is hilarious. I mean, what fucking ghouls.
It's a great rant.
Fantastic. Ashira, who's your favorite squad member to pick on?
Mrs. Cori Bush. I would also like to know, she's a pastor, a woman of the cloth.
Who gives a shit?
Cori Bush has said that Israel...
She said, we can't be silent about Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. Babies dead, pregnant women's dead, elderly dead, generations of families dead, millions of people in Gaza with nowhere to go being slaughtered. The U.S. must stop funding these atrocities against Palestinians. I mean, the most you can say about that is that is actually understated. Because there's also the fact that Israel and the U.S. have openly said they're cutting off food, water, and fuel, which means that literally they don't have to fire another shot. They can just keep that in place, and they can just wait, and people will all drop dead. And people already are dropping dead of starvation as a result of that. Have been for a while now. People are fucking eating tree leaves to have something in their fucking stomachs. Okay, so let's see. I mean, but I mean, they're going to be offended by this. So let's see how they do it. How do you go about being offended by this entirely reasonable and completely accurate statement? Again, it's understated. She didn't give numbers. You give numbers, it's really fucked up.
Is committing ethnic cleansing. As we have said on the show many times, that the population in Gaza has doubled. So how can that be ethnic cleansing?
That isn't how that works. That's literally just not how that works. It's funny, this is another example of how Zionists have plagiarized Holocaust deniers. Because Holocaust deniers use that same sort of argument. They will use the Jewish birth rate to prove that there couldn't have been a genocide. But that's not how genocide works, and it's definitely not how ethnic cleansing works. Because ethnic cleansing, as a concept, does not actually require killing. It specifically means you're kicking people out of a particular area that they live in order to replace them with members of a different ethnic group. Theoretically, you could have an ethnic cleansing where nobody dies. It generally doesn't happen because people generally don't like being ethnically cleansed, and it ends up being a bit of a fight. But, I mean, Israel is openly, top Israeli officials have openly called for the entire population of Gaza the survivors, whoever survives this thing, to be expelled and just sent to remote countries so that they can never come back. Ethnic cleansing is really... Well, the really weird thing about Asher Solomon is, on this show, she has said she's Jewish. I had assumed, in part based on that name, at the start that she was Jewish. Then I looked her up, and her fucking, her Twitter bio, the first word in it is Christian. So I don't know what the fuck's up with that. I don't particularly care.
Not to mention the fact that the only ethnic cleansing that's happened in this region is that of the Christians that have gone from 20% of the region to 4%.
And she's...
No, you're skipping the Nakba. And also, ethnic cleansing, it isn't always ethnic cleansing when percentages change. Like, this was a thing we saw last week. Like, she was trying to claim that the percentage of Christians in Bethlehem going down was ethnic cleansing, when, in fact, the percentage of Christians in Bethlehem going down was the result of the borders of Bethlehem being redrawn to incorporate a bunch of surrounding refugee camps that were, for all intents and purposes, long since incorporated into the city, but were technically not part of it for, like, funding and local government purposes. And the result of that, since those had overwhelmingly Muslim populations, is that the percentage of Christians went down, and she called that ethnic cleansing. So, like, she's just skipping over the Nakba, of course. Yeah, Israel has been, like, openly... She's the one, you will remember, south of Sublime, who was on LBC radio, and she got totally monster because she was trying to claim... This was when Israel was condemned by the Pope for a sniper attack on a convent that a bunch of Catholic people were... seeking shelter in, that killed a bunch of women. And she told this LBC presenter that there were no Christians in Gaza. And the LBC presenter knew better. She said there were no churches, and the LBC presenter said, well, obviously there are some because they're being shot at and there are people in them. And she said, no, what I meant to say is there are no Christians. And he says... That's kind of funny you say that, because I was just talking with a Christian Palestinian who's an MP here, and he's got family in Gaza who are also Christian. So yeah, you're full of fucking shit. That's her. She cares about the Christians, you see. But I see it is almost it's getting up to 1 a.m. So it is time for me to start wrapping up. And River Rune, again, if you're interested, and really don't feel any pressure. But if you're interested in, like, talking to me and, like, I can help you set up, like, a playlist that you can use to help learn Spanish or whatever it is you might want to do. And just some tips on how best to use it and stuff like that. Anytime you want. Absolutely no pressure, but I'm absolutely just happy to do it if you're interested. So I will be back at 11:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time tomorrow, and we will continue this, or we will look at some other visions from hell, as the U.S. bravely defends the concept of boats against Yemen, because that's what that's all about. Remember, it's not about genocide. It's not about specifically Israeli shipping, because if they admitted it was specifically Israeli shipping, some people would be like, ah, yeah, based, actually. Somebody should have done that a long time ago. So they've decided that they're going to just pretend that Yemen has a problem with boats in general. So, yes. Have a good night, and if you enjoy the stream and can part with the money, please consider supporting the stream with a tip or by joining my Patreon, as a number of people already have. I love you. I always love my supporters, and I love seeing all you in chat. I mean, I think it's so cool that there is a lively chat every single time these days. Because I still remember when I was like talking to an empty chat, and it was really fucking hard. That like first year where I would almost where like the one actual human who showed up in my chat, because a lot of the time it was just totally empty, was Caleb Maupin demanding I debate him, and then I immediately blocked him, so he didn't come back. So it's just so cool to have this lively chat. I really am glad to see you all, and I look forward to seeing you all tonight. I mean, tomorrow night. Well, I guess it is technically tonight now. So, see you in a little under 24 hours,